month and a half off for a reason, but we're here now, so I guess I kind of have to. Your event is starting, and we are live, I think. The timer's going up, so I assume so. What is up, guys? It is Wednesday, the 11th of April, and you're probably wondering where Emily is. She couldn't make it this week, and we've been gone for like a month, so instead, I'm joined by the amazing Eric Rosenberg. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing great. And I feel like if Emily couldn't be here, I'm glad that at least you were able to find someone with an E name.
Yeah,
as
I was fixing the name tags on the bottom, because it usually says Emily Hester on it. I was like, oh, those names are almost similar.
Like we have a couple letters in common. We're practically twins.
Yeah, it's close enough. So it's been a while since we spoke, and what caused this was we were discussing on Twitter, because that's where all reasonable conversation happens, obviously.
Except for with my wife, she won't use Twitter. She has a Twitter account that she doesn't use, and every time she says something really funny and obnoxiously, ridiculously funny, like I'm falling over laughing, I will tag her and say, I actually have a Google Keep note running of ridiculous quotes from my wife.
Oh, that's great. I need to get something like that going. That's great. But we were essentially discussing how America hates citizens, essentially. Was that not practically it?
I don't know if those were the exact words I used, but how it all started, I'll give people some backstory, because I'm not anti-patriotic about my country. But yes, so there's all these changes in the telecom industry and phone industries about how people are charged and how phone ownership works. And what George, I don't remember the exact quote, but I responded essentially that the reason you'd said that it's crazy to you that you would think about paying per gigabyte,
yeah,
I think, or per meg, and having data caps on your internet. And I said, well, of course we do that, because it's America and we put corporations ahead of people, rather than where you live in the EU, or at least for now.
Yeah, for the time being, not for long.
Where they put people in front of corporations. So I guess you guys in the UK better watch out, because you might lose that when you lose your EU veil.
Yeah, you never know. I'm hoping, because there are a couple of things that we're probably losing. I'm hoping that's not one of them, to be completely honest. What started it off, though, was actually, because that was just the second part of the conversation. It started off with the pancake packaging, the pancake mix packaging. That was what started the entire conversation.
Yes, it's the holiday Passover just ended, and for those who don't know much about Passover, us Jews have a very, very strict set of dietary rules for those 8 days and what we cannot eat. There's a lot more we can't eat than we can, it feels like. But there are companies that know, they hire the best of the best rabbinical minds to understand everything they can make that's allowed. And the biggest company probably that does this is Manischewitz, known more for the wine that they make. That actually in college during Passover, fun little tidbit, sidebar, we used to play beer pong a lot, and on Passover, because we couldn't have beer, we'd play Manischewitz pong. But Manischewitz also makes this, a lot of these packaged products for Passover. One was a pancake mix, and I opened up the box, and I would say it was maybe a quarter full.
It was. I mean, personally, I saw that as less than a quarter. So let me just open this up.
It was probably less than a quarter. I did a video of it and pictures of it because I was so mad, and I almost started I joked about starting a boycott Manischewitz hashtag because I was so mad about it.
I'm not surprised.
I realized part of the problem is most people who keep strict kosher, they wouldn't eat or know about the food qualities of non-kosher brands. Right. Whereas I eat a lot of vegetarian things that don't have a strict kosher labeling on it. I wouldn't do it at home, but out I do. So I get exposure to actual high quality food and packaged things. And I wouldn't say anything packaged is really that high quality because it's packaged.
Yeah.
But, I get access to all of those things. So I know better. But a lot of the most orthodox, most religious followers don't know any better. So they're just getting ripped off and don't know. And that like makes me so mad. I'm like, I feel like us Jews should be taking care of ourselves. We have enough people who are out to get us and have hated us for, thousands of years. The least we could do is not rip each other off on pancake mix. But
yeah, I feel like ripping each other off in general.
Yeah, we shouldn't rip off anybody ever. Like, it shouldn't matter if what their religion, race, creed, gender. It doesn't matter if you're a blind female freelance writer, like we were just talking about before, a transgender blind freelance writer who is having trouble with the wage cap. Yeah, like no one should get ripped off like that. But then we started talking about, it should be illegal for that kind of packaging to be in place, and it actually is. So I don't know how they get away with it. I feel like I should complain to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, that enforces that, because it is a very misleading package. Yeah. I mean, there's an exception for things like potato chips or anything like popcorn, bagged popcorn, if it's already popped.
Yeah.
Where there's a reason to add extra air to the packaging so it wouldn't destroy the product in shipping.
Yeah.
But if they try to convince that having less air in the package will destroy the pancake mix,
like no, it makes it too powdery. We need some air in there.
Yeah, because the powder gets too compact. Like, it's powder, it's mixed. Like, you add milk to it and it turns into pancakes and eggs. Like, not. I was so mad. But then we started talking about how this happens in telecom and other industries, and to me the big and the thing that got me most excited about joining you today was to talk about the difference in how cell phone networks came up in Europe and the United States, and why that is evidence that Europe treats its people better and America treats its corporations better.
Yeah, it's things like the whole no data caps thing, because I think there's an important distinction to make, because people think of the internet as, well, people don't think of the internet as a series of pipes, but if you really break it down, right, the wires are essentially piped with, if you think of water pipes, instead of water, it's information. And the difference...
It's little fiber optic cables instead of water. I've actually, in an old job, and I used to work in telecom, I got to go to one of the biggest data centers in Denver, and I got to touch the internet.
Ooh.
It's like, it is a thing you can physically touch. There was, in this one room that we had to go through secure doors and cameras and stuff to get into the building. And then another set of security with someone who had access to all that stuff. I was in finance. I shouldn't have access to any of that stuff. I just decided if it was too expensive or if we should buy more of it. They, multiple sets of secure doors to get into the main data center area of the building.
Right.
And then within that, there's different locked cages that some of them said Google, some said Facebook, one said British Telecom, one said Deutsche Telekom. All big telecom companies, big companies that need tons and tons of data. There was one row of servers that said Netflix on them.
Oh, wow.
That was the real reason that I got to go there, was because I was working on making Netflix happen. So I got to touch Netflix. And that night I went home and watched a show. I was like, I know where this is coming from.
If that isn't the title of this episode, I don't know what is. I got to touch Netflix.
Yeah, then through another set of super locked and secure fire doors, like, the most secure. It was like walking into a bank vault. I used to run a bank, so it did feel like I know what that's like. It felt like walking into a bank vault, but much more high tech. In there was a series of big, expensive routers, and not like the kind of router you have at home that costs like $100 or $200. These were like 10 and 100 gig routers that carry like the entirety of traffic of the internet going in and out of Colorado. It's split, and there was a pipe on one side of the room that said Dallas, and a pipe on the other side of the room that said, I think, Omaha/Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And like, that was literally the internet. And when I went over and touched it, he said, don't touch any of those buttons or you might go to jail. Because apparently that would have been like disrupting our nation's technology infrastructure, and that's a crime. But yeah, it was cool. I got to touch the internet. But but looking at land versus mobile, There's some big differences in how the billings and data caps and stuff work in the US. But what really makes me super like red in the face angry, Ajit Pai, who's probably not listening, so I can call him whatever horrible names I want. He's Trump's head of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, who regulates what telecom companies can and can't do. And during the Obama era, they got it all clear that net neutrality was the law of the land, which means that if you pay your internet company money to have access to the internet and want something through that internet, they can't discriminate what comes faster or slower or how much of it you get.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you click your email or let's say Comcast is one of the biggest internet companies in the US, or a Comcast video or a Netflix video, you should get them all equally. I mean, that makes sense, right? Is that how you would think the internet should work?
Yeah, no, it's highly reasonable, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all just data. And, if I say I want 5 gigabytes of Facebook information, then I should be able to get it at the same speed as 1 megabyte of Facebook information, right?
Or 5 megabytes of Netflix or 5 megabytes of Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this. Twitter could have slower servers. Like we all remember the fail whale if we've been on Twitter a long time.
Yeah.
But that's caused by the data provider, not your internet provider. So the internet provider, net neutrality said, it just has to be open. Whatever you want, you're paying for it, you should get it. Doesn't matter if it's porn or wholesome material or anything else. You should get it equally. What the new law, so the FCC got rid of that essentially. So it's not a new law. They just said, we're not going to enforce this anymore. It's all gone. So telecom companies, you can go, am I allowed to use bad words on this show?
Yeah, go for it.
You can go fuck all of your customers.
That was essentially it, yeah.
And do whatever you want with their data. And if they want faster, you can charge more. And if they want more than a terabyte a month or whatever you think is reasonable, you can put a cap on that and slow down their data at that point or charge more for more data. And even better for your profits, if you have a video service, like let's say you're AT&T and you own DirecTV, like you essentially own one of the biggest video services in the country when you own DirecTV, you could put a throttle on YouTube and Netflix, Dailymotion, whatever video sites you want to throttle. So people are kind of stuck watching your stuff that you make them pay you for, or they have to pay more money if you let them to get the other stuff.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, maddening is the only word I can think of to describe how frustrating that is as a user. And lucky for me, I have a Spectrum Internet. It's owned by Charter, and they have committed to, they've not put any caps on, and they've not done any filtering or anything like that I know of. So I've been lucky. But, that's just because of where I live. In the United States, you don't really get to choose your telecom companies. It's done by each city or state has a contract with the providers. So you get who you're stuck with, which is usually either one cable company or one phone/DSL option. So you're kind of screwed if you want fast and open internet and you live in the United States.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that I'm completely on board with the idea that you should be able to, leave it unregulated and hopefully market forces do their own thing. However, the issue is that they're essentially small monopolies all over the US, right? If everyone had the choice,
they're regulated monopolies.
Yeah, and if they had the choice of 8 options, then whatever, throw net neutrality out the window, and whoever offers the best services will be the one who wins. However, when there's only one option, it's basically a fuck you to whoever wants that service.
And there are so few options nationwide. I could probably name them all, counting them on my fingers. It's like Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, Charter. I don't know if I'm missing anybody. I mean, that's like it. And then you can get into the rural telecom providers. There's a couple of those also. But it's really like 4 or 5 big companies. Bell South. I don't know if they're still independent. And it all came out of... And what's crazy is you'd think we would have learned our lesson in this country because we've had this happen before. It just before it was phone calls, not data. But what happened, I mean, really, it was in the 80s. It was in my lifetime. There was, the history of the telecom system in the U.S. was, a bunch of small networks that all kind of merged together into this big company called AT&T that the government said, whoa, you're too big. We're going to chop you up into what were called the baby bells, because the phone system was called the Bell system, named after Alexander Graham Bell, who invented it. So they chopped it up into all these smaller regulated monopolies. But then, 20 years went by and everyone forgot about that whole thing that happened in the 80s with telecom regulation. So they deregulated it all and the companies started buying each other again. So, half of those baby bells, I think, are gone now. Quest is gone. They got bought by CenturyLink. Level 3 Communications, I used to work for. They weren't a baby bell, but another major telecom company was bought by CenturyLink. So I missed CenturyLink when I was saying the big internet providers. That's one I was missing. It's funny to think about the one that I almost kind of worked for. I would have been laid off if I'd stuck around. But so it's these few companies, and as it comes down to, do you trust a company has your well-being in mind? And outside of Charter, that's let us essentially still have net neutrality, the answer has been no, because the other companies have put in data caps and have put in throttling and limits. And I mean, I understand. I could see an argument for throttling like BitTorrent stuff. And I might personally be sad if they did that, but I could see why I could see arguments for that, because it's used more for something that is illegal than for things that are legal, even though it has many legal uses.
And it's also the thing with torrenting in general is actually that it also uses a hell of a lot of resources.
Right, yeah, because you're sucking up tons and tons of data from all over the internet.
Yeah, so it's I get, it would suck, but I can understand why you would throttle that, because it is.
Yeah, but when you get to like YouTube and Netflix, I mean, those are consumer services. Like there's nothing illegal about those. And yeah, Netflix at prime time is the biggest data user in any time zone, probably, definitely here in the US. Like I used to have access to all the charts where I could see like everyone getting off work on the East Coast and Netflix data starting to creep up. Then those peak hours when everyone's off work before the East Coast starts to go to bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a ton of data, and it's really expensive for the telecom companies to maintain the infrastructure to run that. But to me, that's a battle almost between Netflix and, let's say, AT&T, or Netflix and Comcast, not me and AT&T or me and Comcast, because I paid AT&T or whoever for that data line, and I paid Netflix for those videos, and if I click play, it should just play.
Yeah. Interestingly, on the subject of data caps, I tear through data like at ridiculous rates. So for context, I've been backing up all of our videos, all of our project files, which is roughly
a lot of data.
It's roughly 4.5 terabytes.
Yeah.
So I spent the last 2 weeks, just uploading essentially nonstop, right? And Virgin Media, who are my internet provider, who are one of the best in the UK, I'd say, in terms of getting that balance between speed and price. They haven't said a word. It's just been like, oh yeah, cool. He's, you can do whatever the hell he wants. Because I was half expecting a phone call after we hit like 3 terabytes uploaded nonstop to be like, George, what the hell are you doing? Because
you're obviously torrenting. No, I'm backing up my business files.
So it's and because we pay for a business line, because what they do is what a lot of internet providers do is they don't shut off your access, but they throttle it after you upload a certain amount. So
that's what happens here.
Yeah. So if you upload more than, I think it's usually like 2 gigabytes or something, then they start throttling it. If you have a business account, which is more or less the same price as a regular account, then they get rid of that cap. But we're currently paying about $55 a month for 350 megabits per second down and about 20 up.
That is so good compared to what we have here.
Right?
Regulated monopoly. I have 2 options for internet here. It's AT&T DSL, which DSL, I don't know, let's Google. Because this makes the best kind of podcasting. I'll do an internet search live on the air. What do you think? I was curious while you were talking about how much data you've used. Over the last 30 days, I've downloaded 534 gigs and uploaded 789. I guess the upload is higher because I use a backup program that's constantly doing cloud backups for my computer.
Yeah.
In addition to Dropbox and Google Drive. So I have lots of stuff going up and down. But that includes some high usage days. You can definitely see the couple of spikes in there. And 5 days I was on a trip at my parents' house in Denver, so zero traffic. I have a Google On Hub router, so I can see it all with the Google Wi-Fi app. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is I'm just looking at it through Windows 10 because Windows shows you for your device how much. So for the last 30 days.
What's Windows? No, I'm kidding.
So in the last 30 days, I love how it doesn't actually go up to terabytes. It just ends up going to thousands of gigabytes. So I've uploaded about 3,000 gigabytes, and I've used about 300. It's actually it's relatively low. If I look on my phone, however, I can imagine that being a lot higher. Let me just double check. Settings.
AT&T is about to tell me what it would cost for slow internet here.
I've used about a gigabyte of data actually, so less than I'd assumed. But I got a new phone last week, so that's just in the last week or so.
Let's see. And see, like they try to sell you on the packages, like they'll get the TV and the phone and the internet and
yeah.
And
we actually
internet. Oh, this website's really bad. Come on, AT&T, up your game.
You think the people selling the internet would be good at selling the internet?
Yeah. Let's see. So it looks like 50 megs per second is $40 a month. I don't know if that's an introductory offer or. See, what a lot of them do is they'll say, here, with 12-month agreement. And after 12 months, then they, double your price or something. So $40 a month for 50 megs. And I pay right now, I think about $50 a month for 100 megs. And that's the fastest I can get. And that is a 12-month introductory deal, which at the end, it'll go up to whatever they think it should cost. I don't know what that is.
So two questions.
But either way, I'm paying about the same as you, or a little bit more, for a third the speed, less than a third the speed.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you then. First of all, you said there are no caps, right? So that's for unlimited data.
Yes.
Yeah. And
that's just my internet company. Like if I went with the AT&T one, I think they do have caps.
Yeah. And then second of all, because it's a business line, we get sort of 24/7 support and next day engineer out on site. Let me just double check.
Oh, our telecom industry doesn't believe in customer service. You can call in and if you're lucky enough to push the right combination of buttons to get to a person after 10 minutes, they will just read scripts to you and treat you like an idiot. It's pretty bad. Like I'm not picking on any specific company with that. I actually had a pretty good setup experience for my internet. I was happy with it. But internet companies I've used in the past, like they give you a window, like we'll be out in 3 days between 10 and noon. So of course you can't be at work and your internet's not working. So you can't work from home. So you're just like stuck sitting there. And then they show up an hour and a half late. You're like, I have a job. Like, it's super frustrating doing anything with internet companies here.
So I'm just looking now, and for a 12-month 50 meg contract, actually let's look at 100. So 100 meg is £32 a month, which is $45. So it's actually not too far off in price.
Oh, That seems reasonable. And how many internet companies do you have to choose from? So, like in London, in the Greater London area.
So in the London area, there are actually a lot of. So the way it works is the majority of the framework is actually built by BT, or was built by BT. They were quite recently told to spin out into a separate company, because the issue was that if you're the company selling the cables you laid, you could sell them yourself for a lower price and tell others to pass it on for a more expensive price. So they've been told to split the cable laying company from the internet selling to normal people company.
Because here the government would encourage them to do that and probably give them tax write-offs for infrastructure development that then let them charge consumers more money.
Yes, and now that that was what they were doing, but now that the infrastructure is built and it's more maintenance than it is building out, they've been told to sort of force those two apart. So most internet providers are actually built on the same backbone, called OpenReach. So the company used to be called BT OpenReach, but BT were told to get out of there. So it's just OpenReach. So they'll actually all use a similar backbone, and at that point it's just shopping around to who has the things you want more. If you're in central London, then there are multiple choices. Here we have a couple of the big ones. So Virgin Media, Sky, who also do the sort of TV. And then I think there are a couple more, but most of them will, and then BT obviously, and then
Fox News, or Fox in the US, is trying to buy Sky News, so then you guys could get the same bad quality news.
No.
Then it's just like BBC or what Rupert Murdoch tells me to think.
Oh right? Man, that's terrible. Oh no.
They're trying. We'll see if they get away with it. But so another thing, the thing that makes me almost more mad about how, like, a better example of the egregiousness of how consumers take a backseat to companies, is the way the mobile networks were built out. So the difference of what happened in Europe versus the US when cell phones were this brand new thing that had just been invented in Israel, actually. High five Israel for inventing cell phones. Motorola Mobility there was the one who did it. But in Europe, they said, all right, there's all these different ways we can build cell phones. So let's just pick one that we think will work the best for everybody and make that the standard. Yeah. And that was GSM. So for people in the United States listening, here's how it works if you use your phone in Europe. If you get really pissed off at your phone company, you take out a little chip in the back, your SIM card, and put in a new one for another phone company, and your phone is now with a new phone company. It's that easy.
Yeah.
Here in the US, when you buy a phone, it is tied. Oh, let me back up before that. There was no discussion of which technology is better. It was the Wild West of phones. And the government pretty much said, all right, phone companies, you can build whatever kind of networks you want. So about half the phone companies, the big ones notably are AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. Not surprisingly, T-Mobile being of European roots, all went with GSM phones.
Yeah.
And Verizon, Big Red as we often call it, went and built a different kind of network that didn't use SIM cards. It was completely non-compatible with GSM. So when I had a Verizon phone, when I took a trip to England, my phone didn't work at all. It was like a brick. I might as well have been on another planet. It was like I could charge it, like I could turn it on.
You can use Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I could look up people's phone numbers. There wasn't even Wi-Fi yet on phones back then. Because this was pre-smartphones.
Right.
But it was flip phone, I think, actually. Remember, those were cool, flip phones.
Samsung sell a flip phone, and it's great because it's just like
phones.
They're essentially two 4-inch phones just like tied together by a hinge, and it's hilarious.
I should get I want a flip phone that's like when the Pixel 3 comes out, I want like 2 of those.
Actually, Samsung are working on that. That's set to be coming out this year. It's called the Galaxy X. That's the rumored name for it. And because of the flexible OLED display, this is a snappy tech topic, but that's fine. Because of the flexible display technology, it will actually. The idea is instead of being a flip phone, you use it as a phone, and then you can unfold it to use it as more of a iPad Mini. So it has two different sizes.
That'll be fun to see.
So
and because it has X at the end of the name, they can charge $1,000 like Apple.
Well, I think that's the kind of technology that would be worth $1,000. To be fair,
it might be. Honestly, my phone. Like I was thinking about it. Your phones are a lot of money. My phone, I paid let's say $650. It's a Nexus 6P. So I'm hoping it'll last until the Pixel 3 comes out. That's what I'm shooting for. So if this phone will make it another 6 months or so, I'm golden on that. But for $650, I got something that I use like 9 to 10 hours a day. It feels like.
Yeah.
Like I use it constantly. It's like less than $1 a day that I pay for my phone. Like that's actually pretty good value. Even at $1,000, it'd still probably be a good value for the way I use it in my business.
Not only that, but if you think about it, it is most people's primary computer. Like outside of professionals who do, video editing or Photoshop work, like most of your time at a computer is probably on your phone. And on the subject of that sort of unfolding dual screen phone concept, ZTE did actually release a phone called the Axon M. And that is, they literally just took two screens and attached them via hinge. So it's like a slightly toned down version of what the Samsung one is expected to look like, because that won't have the bezel in the middle, because it will be one continuous screen as opposed to two separate sort of devices that are kind of glued together. But yeah, it's interesting how phones have taken over our lives and social media, and then Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg is essentially not a human. Let's be completely honest. We all saw his. Reddit has been nothing but Zuckerberg memes for the last 2 days.
He's my age and was in my fraternity, just at a different school. So we're practically brothers, Mark and I. We both ended in Berg.
I'm not sure that's 100% a good thing. If anything, I'd be distancing myself from Mark Zuckerberg around now.
I don't know. I think he's doing great. I mean, the whole Cambridge Analytica thing is a whole other story. But but back to phones. So I have a question for you about phones.
Go for it.
If you buy a phone, let's say it costs $500 to $1,000.
Yep.
Do you think you should be able to use it however you choose?
Oh, this is to do with the right to repair and stuff like that, right?
Well, this is both the Apple philosophy of phones,
yes,
and the phone network thing. It's both.
Yeah.
It's like I say. So do you think you should be able to do whatever you want with your $1,000 thing?
So here's the thing. Yes, however, I am aware that technically you don't actually own your phone. I think, or at least that's the way that cars are set up.
It depends.
Yeah, it does depend definitely, but
like I bought my phone. Like I just paid for it. I got a 24-month payment plan that was attached to my Google's Project Fi phone service.
Yeah.
So it was like $25 a month or whatever for 24 months, and now I own my phone free and clear.
Yeah, so I'd argue that in that situation, you shouldn't technically. It's difficult in the sense that as a tinkerer, of course, if I pay for something, I want to be able to do whatever the hell I want with it. Especially if it's hardware, because it's difficult. Because I know John Deere do this with like mowers and stuff, where to update it, you actually just need a USB stick with the software on it. But they'll charge you like $500, and you have to take it in, and it takes them a day for whatever reason.
That's my wife's car has a built-in GPS thing. Right. That's what it would be to update it. It would be like $500.
Yeah, and they just literally, stick a USB stick in, it runs the update, and that's it.
Yep. It's a great value for $500 for them.
Ridiculous.
So the point I was really trying to get to was, because I bought this phone unlocked from Google, I could potentially pop in a SIM card from AT&T or T-Mobile or Sprint and change phone companies if I wanted. But I used to get my phones from Verizon, and you technically didn't own them. There were all these different technicalities and contracts that were 400 pages long to get your phone plan that were ridiculous, and $400 cancel your phone fees and all these things. But it's just the whole contracted system that we developed here, and having the two different types of networks meant that when I was mad at Verizon at one point, and I was so overpaying them and over their customer service and over everything about it, and I found Project Fi, I was like, this is so cool. It's going to cost me half the money.
Yeah.
I couldn't just take my phone and start using Project Fi, nor could I have taken it to AT&T or any of their competitors, or even the little phone companies like Cricket. There's some discount phone companies that they're MVNOs. They run on, they have like a virtual network that runs on another network, which my phone with Project Fi is actually a virtual network that runs on a combination of Sprint and T-Mobile in USA Cellular if you're in the middle of nowhere. But I try to stay in the middle of somewhere, so I don't use them. But so when I switched to Project Fi, I had to buy this new phone. If I left them, I wouldn't have to do that because I'm not in a contract and I have an unlocked phone, which is how phones should work.
Yeah.
And how many of them do in the UK and around Europe. Where here it's like all contracts and you're locked in. And you don't really
say is that, if you took out a 2-year contract on your phone and then, because you get, the first 30 days to return it, right? They have a 30-day grace period essentially where you can go, actually I've reconsidered, and just give it back.
I don't think we have.
So I got the Huawei Mate 10 Pro, right? I purchased this.
Yeah, we also don't use Huawei phones anymore because we're afraid China's going to take over the world.
I almost didn't want to mention it, but it's just hilarious. I've never seen the US rally so hard around against, like, rejecting a technology company.
It's, I mean, I get it, like, a little bit, but it's mostly ridiculous.
Yeah. But anyway, so I've got the Mate 10 Pro, and Huawei announced a new phone last week, and because I was still within my first 30 days, I was able to go, actually, I want that one, not this one, and just exchange it. So at some point, they don't have any in stock currently. So at some point, I think either this week or next week, depending on whenever they get one in stock, someone will come here, right? I'll give them this phone, they'll give me the new phone, and that's it. And that's
here. Even if you pay extra for the phone insurance, let's say your phone breaks, you'll probably just get a refurbished version of your phone.
Yeah.
You can't change. Once you open the package, it's your phone.
Yeah.
They're not going to take it back. Unless there's something, if there's something wrong with it, like it's an actual, like, defective phone.
Yeah.
But then they would, I think, give you a new one to replace it. But because of the way the contracts work, they wouldn't let you upgrade or downgrade at that point. You get the same kind of phone, just a replacement.
Yeah, and so the thing with this is, this phone is actually technically carrier locked, right? And unless you buy a phone unlocked, all phones in the UK will by default come carrier locked. However, the reason for that is actually that they're only locked for the first 30 days. So you'd actually have to call them and say, hey, can you unlock my phone now, if you were going on holiday. So you could, stick a different SIM card in, but you would have to pay out the rest of that contract, right? Because you're in the contract. So if, I was having issues with, I'm currently with Vodafone. So if I was having issues with them, I could actually, call them up and say, hey, can you unlock my SIM card because I'm going on holiday? They'd unlock my phone, and then I can stick in whatever SIM card I want, and it would work. I'd have to, pay for the services I signed the contract for, or verbally signed the contract for. But yeah, that's the way that would work.
I'm really impressed. My father-in-law just got a new Pixel 2 at my suggestion.
Right.
So I got to play with it and help him get it all set up. And that one he got right from Google, from Project Fi, unlocked. What's actually really cool about that phone, it has an internal eSIM.
Yes.
So it doesn't need a SIM card. He actually, because he doesn't know as much about phones, he took it to his old phone company, Sprint, that I was trying to help him leave. And they put a SIM card in it and got it all configured for Sprint, which then I had to go spend all this time undoing. But it taught me something I kind of knew but hadn't really tinkered with. It's cool because it essentially has a dual SIM feature.
Yeah.
So you could have your core Project Fi service, which works anywhere in the world. That's part of why I got it. I can get off a plane at Heathrow and turn on my phone, and it works just the same as if I got on a plane at JFK. Or, it works in like 180 something countries. I mean, almost every country. Like there's probably some country like Tuvalu or Kiribati out in the middle of the ocean,
Probably
somewhere in
Georgia.
the South Pacific. Yeah, in Georgia. Yeah. Nothing works in any former Soviet republic.
Not even democracy. Democracy's struggling in former Soviet republics. I'm not surprised.
You don't even know if the power will stay on. I went to before when Ukraine was less bad about 10 years ago. I went out for I was actually out for Passover. So it was this time of year on a trip with a group of students from Israel, and we met these rabbis in Kiev, and they were telling us, yeah, sometimes the power just goes out for like a couple days, like the gas turns off for a day or so in the winter. Like living without gas in Ukraine in the winter? That sounds horrible. It's better than Serbia, but it sounds horrible. So they have bigger things to worry about than their cell phone speeds. But, South Korea, they're the ones who've got telecom figured out. They're the best. And given it's a small country with a dense population, geographically, everyone pretty much has gigabit internet. Here it's
average internet speed is remarkably high.
Here it makes the news if a city's getting gigabit because it's so rare.
So for context, the UK actually ranks number 31 globally. Let me pull up the global index. So it actually ranks mobile and fixed broadband separately. If you go to speedtest.net/global-index, let me send you the link. They have, there you go. They have the rankings. So this is updated annually. Interestingly, number one in terms of fixed broadband is actually Singapore, with an average of 161 megabit per second download speeds.
I have to say it's really easy for your country to have a high average speed when your country is one city.
I mean, you're not too wrong.
Like if the entire United States was measured by like Manhattan, I bet they have a higher average internet speed. Although I don't know, I'd be curious what New York's averages are.
The US is actually number 9 at 84.5. Let me show this to you guys. So interesting. So you guys actually do a lot better in fixed internet than you do with mobile, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean we're beaten by, like, looking at who's above us. In Romania, Hungary, Macau. Like, come on, we can't beat Hungary. Come on, guys. Iceland's an island in the middle of nowhere. They get faster internet than us, and it's always cold there.
So
we have a good summer season. We could be building our fiber optic lines underground. But no, Iceland still gets better.
It's crazy that you're number 9 in fixed broadband, but number 44 in mobile internet.
I say I have to click see all to see US. They don't even show up on the first page. Yeah, it's interesting. Norway's number 1.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Something kind of cool that we have, right now. We talk about having gone from like 3G to 4G, and there's talks about like 5Gs and 6Gs and what the future of the internet will really look like. And we are nearing a point where what we could do through the air is going to be a lot faster than what we can do underground, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it, that physical infrastructure will become outdated, that we have spent, tens of billions building around the world, and with underground pipelines going, which we'll still use for connecting like under the oceans and stuff. Like, we have this huge network, and that going over the air is going to be faster is very exciting. I've actually read about some startups. I wrote a review about one a year or so ago. They would put essentially it's kind of like a fancy cell phone on a tower on your roof. Right. And it would run a cable into a box in your house with a Wi-Fi router. So that would be your internet connection.
Wow.
And if you live out in a rural area, depending on where, let's say you're in rural Kansas, it's very, very flat. So you have really good line of sight. So you might really be able to get faster cellular internet than you would physical internet.
Yeah, you can actually get specific routers in the UK that you put a SIM card in and they just work off your data plan. So we don't have one, but one of my friends does. There's like a backup internet device where, you know, if you end up in a situation where you really need internet and your main source goes down, it's literally just a router that, to all intents and purposes, looks normal but has a SIM card in it so that you can use your data.
It's just like a Wi-Fi hotspot standalone, essentially.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I've seen the jetpack type things where you can plug it into the side of a laptop and give it mobile connection. That's actually another thing. I didn't mean to have a Project Fi commercial today. That's what I'm doing. That's another benefit of Project Fi.
So Google, if you're listening to this, do sponsor us, by the way. Not going to say no to that.
Sponsor the show and just give me money, because why not? Who doesn't want to give me money? A lot of people, I guess. So,
I feel like you'd get a finder's fee for that, to be fair.
I should, yeah. I want a 10%, 20%. Sold. You can get from Project Fi additional SIM cards at no extra cost, and use them if you have like an iPad that has a SIM card slot or something like that, or even how I've seen some people use it, which isn't, I guess, technically how you're supposed to use it. You can even pop it in another phone because it's just a SIM card. So it would be a data-only phone, but because of how Project Fi works, you can make phone calls with data. Like it's one of the tenets of how it works. Is it would look to a Wi-Fi connection before cellular if it's faster. So you could have multiple phones working on the same number at the same time. I don't know that I would find that all that useful. I guess if you have all phones with internal batteries and you want to swap them out because of the charger or something, charging issues.
How does calling work then? So if you were to call it, would it call all of them?
I think so. I think that it's someone I've only read about it. I haven't done it.
Right.
But they're supposed to be data only, but I think they're the exact same SIM card. But now that they're using eSIMs, I don't know. I guess you could still get a SIM card though at no charge, and they just charge you. How the data works. I love my cell phone plan. I think it's awesome. It's $20 a month for unlimited calls and texts within the U.S., Canada, I think Mexico maybe, and then $10 a gig of data you use. No minimums, with a maximum of $60 charge. So once you hit 6 gigs, any data used past that is no charge. So the most you would ever spend in a month is about $85 a line with all the taxes and fees.
Yeah.
And the average phone here is like $120 or so a month. So the maximum you would ever spend there is still 33% lower than the average you would pay elsewhere.
Yeah, so for context, actually, I didn't realize that the pricing on this was so different either. Because I'm currently paying, I've just done the conversion, about $65 a month for this. And I'm getting the phone, right, because I'm making payments on the phone as well. And then unlimited calls and texts, because that's just standard at this point for most things, unless you're going for the really cheap. It tends to be unlimited calls and texts. And then also 32 gigabytes of data.
That's a month?
A month, yeah, per month.
32 gigs a month. So you could just like sit and watch videos all day on mobile.
I burn through it surprisingly quickly. Like, it is ridiculous.
Do you use it on Wi-Fi mode when you're at home, or do you not bother?
No. I use it on Wi-Fi when at home. I actually, because it's with Vodafone, I actually also get Wi-Fi hotspots when I'm on the underground. So the underground trains will have, all the stations have Wi-Fi via Vodafone, and I get that for free as well.
That's great. That's one of my biggest complaints when I've been in London or New York or places I think of. I've gone into the subways and my phone just stops working instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, London have.
Oh, there's a little bit of there's a little plus to that. Like, that's the one place with like that peaceful. Like, I'm not going to check an email. No tweets are coming.
Yeah, in the last 2 years they've changed that, so they have now Wi-Fi hotspots that are free for up to like 2 hours, generally. But you have to sign into them, so you can't just act oblivious. And they don't work between stations because they're at stations as opposed to like on the trains. So if you're sort of traveling through a train, then you have like spots of internet. so it's just easier to leave it off most of the time.
Before you know it, they'll add it to the trains too. I hear there's a bunch of bus services that have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
On our above ground train, Amtrak has Wi-Fi. It works horribly.
Yeah, actually,
I tried it out. I took a train ride to San Diego for a conference a year or so ago, and I was getting like 5 kilobits if I was lucky, so I gave up. It was horrible. I just turned my phone onto a hotspot for a minute and sucked up the like $2 of data charges I was going to have.
Yeah, we have our rail system is privatized outside of the underground, so there are a bunch of different companies, but one for us that goes from where we are to central London is called C2C, which stands for coast to centre, right? So they go from central London out to Southend, which is one of the beaches, coast town, hence coast to centre, or centre to coast. It depends which way around you're travelling. It's great.
Yeah, I love that. You can't be Londoners. Don't be so centrist. I think it's not coast to center. It's not all about you, London.
But they have, and this is relatively recently implemented in the last year or so. They implemented free Wi-Fi for up to 20 minutes, but they also implemented, if you don't want to use the Wi-Fi, they have like their own entertainment. So in the same way that, like, if you have like in-flight entertainment, you can like pick a movie they have on the system.
We have that on Southwest Airlines. You have to pay for the internet, but you can watch movies and TV shows on your phone for free.
Yeah, so it's like that, but the first 20 minutes of internet's free as well. And in most cases, 20 minutes is actually the majority of your journey time anyway, and you're above ground, so you have normal data.
It's not like I took the Channel train from London to Paris, I guess 2 years ago. Wow, I was thinking my daughter's 2.5 and she was 6 months old. Wow, it was 2 years ago. And that was a cool train ride. But when I was sitting under the English Channel, I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to get internet here. I think I'm going to take a nap.
It's not
which I did.
It's crazy how quick that train is, though, as well. The fact that you can go...
It's fun.
Because you can go there for lunch and then come back again if you really wanted.
It would be an expensive lunch, but you could do it.
They've actually lowered the price now as well. They've they have like specific day trips. So if you go out in the morning and back in the evening, it's like, I think like $50 or something, $50.
Oh, that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, although when I went, that trip, I did 8 days in London and I stayed in an Airbnb right by Smithfield. Right. I actually was from the window of my Airbnb. I looked down at that parking garage where they filmed James Bond driving out really fast one time. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then we did a few days in Paris. We stayed in Paris. We didn't take the train back, but yeah, that was cool. I like Europe, man. Now I just want to go to Europe. Like I've been in the mood for a trip. I've been jonesing. Last year, my 2017, I only left the U.S. once, and I went on a boat to Victoria, Canada. Which, like, let's be real, Canada, yes, it's another country, but it's like U.S. light.
Yeah,
like it's very similar. I mean, they speak. I guess in London they speak the same language as well, but in Canada you could almost not tell. You couldn't tell the difference between a Canadian and a Minnesotan or a Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's basically the same as me going to like Scotland and being like, oh no, I'm abroad. Look at me.
Yeah, but at least in Scotland you have Scotch.
True.
So yeah, I'd go to Scotland any day for that. I actually got to meet someone once upon a time whose mother's maiden name was Macallan. And it was at a Macallan Scotch tasting event. And I got to drink I think it was a 25 year was the top that they were willing to give us for free because we knew someone who knew someone.
Right.
So that was awesome. Anyway, so now that I've made fun of London for saying it's not all about you, I'll make it up to you guys by saying I love the beverages that your subcontinent. Is it a subcontinent? Island?
It's
archipelago.
It's basically an island. Let's be honest.
Your nation.
It's an overly angry island, if we're completely honest.
Your angry island. You guys make the best drinks.
There's a bar I really like called The Alchemist.
It's also a great book if you've never read it.
I haven't. No, I wasn't aware of it.
My favorite book ever. The only book I've ever read more than once is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Interesting.
You should read it at the bar.
Oh, I can only imagine. That's a great idea.
You could get the book and go there, and you'll be having a proper pint. And
well, Well, they do pints, but if you were to get it's a cocktail bar. So if you were to get a pint there, it'd be doing a great disservice to the location.
Well, then you go to Manhattan because you're in London, and honestly, you know what I've been ordering lately when I go to the bar? Scotch with nothing else in it.
Oh wow!
Because it just tastes good.
Now I prefer my drinks to be as sweet and non-alcohol tasting as possible.
So like Ross and Friends, you would like Midori because it's green and yummy, or creme de menthe.
Yeah, basically. So when I go to the Alchemist, I go there. I used to go there like once a week. I haven't been there in a while, but at my peak, because it was right next to my old office. So once a week I'd like finish work and be like, oh, let's go to the Alchemist, whatever. So it got to the point where I'd walk in and they knew my order just by seeing me. They're like, yeah, so you want this drink first, and then you want that one, and then depending on the mood, you might have a third one, right?
That's awesome. I had a bar once that they knew me to not quite to that level, but it's a bar in downtown Denver called Falling Rock Tap House, which if you're in Denver and like beer, go to Falling Rock. It's amazing. They have 69 taps, and they're all unique beers around the world. Like there's no Coors Light or any of that. They actually have a sign up that says no crap on tap. Like if you want a Coors Light, I think they have it back in a can or a bottle. But
got some dust on it. No one's looked at it in a while.
Exactly. Like if you want crappy beer, go across the street to the sports bar where they serve crappy beer. But at Falling Rock, I'd go in and I'd say, I want the hoppiest, most delicious IPA you have on tap that I have not had before. So they couldn't just assume what I'd want, because we'd have to go through the ones I've had. So I always wanted to try a new one.
Yeah, it's something about like the idea of not tasting alcohol is so much better to me than tasting it. So they do like, a key lime pie, which is like, if you were to taste it, it genuinely tastes like a key lime pie. Let me pull up the... Do I have a copy of a menu with me right now? I have one downstairs. I'm more of it. They have like really trippy menus as well.
That's fun.
Because it has like a hologram on it, and it's very Illuminati confirmed kind of deal. Let me pull up the website. Oh, they have a very trendy website. Oof. Thealchemist.uk.com. Oof.
I see the light on your face as it's loading.
Yeah.
It's giving you quite a show there.
Yeah, I usually have a light set up on my face for specifically cancelling that out. But I couldn't find it, so yeah.
So I'm going to take us back in time a few minutes in our conversation. I was curious, so I finally found what 5G internet speeds will max out at.
Right.
20 gigs per second over on your phone.
Yeah.
And the UK government is apparently already investing in 6G.
Wow.
They put a £15 million investment in quantum technology studies, it says. And that speed, I mean, really, once you hit 20 gigs per second, like, what are you going to do that needs something faster than that?
So here's the thing. That's not actually the big deal with 5G isn't actually the speed. It's the throughput that speed allows. Because, it's great in like stadiums, for example. If you have the capacity for 20 gig per second, then you have the capacity for more people to be browsing the internet.
So if there's 60,000 people at a football game and they all have their phones on for the big moment at the end, they won't all lose their signal, or like half of them won't lose their signal.
Yeah, so
that's great.
There's that, and then because if you look at it realistically, because the let me find it real quick, the hypothetical top speed of 4G is actually 300 megabit. Realistically, it's actually 42. That's the typical real world speed. Because again, you're not going to utilize that entire speed because of distance and the way the signal degrades. So it's actually more of a potential throughput selling point, and IoT and sports stadiums in highly dense areas, as opposed to using that 20 gig per second speed.
Something I'm curious about. Like if you wanted to stream a 4K 3D video,
Hmm.
what would your bandwidth need be?
So I know that for 4K, I would doing some like back of a paper maths on this. When I record in 4K, my camera currently does 100 megabit per second. And then if you were to double that for 3D, I'd say 200. Realistically, the actual number after compression and all that is probably closer to about 50 to 100.
So let's say you have 3 kids
Hmm.
and they all want to stream at the same exact time a 4K 3D experience with their 3D goggles on that we're
Yeah.
all going to have before we know it. You still wouldn't bust through 300 megs a second,
No.
like what you have right now.
Yeah.
It would go over what I can do right now.
So-
I could do one, but I can do multiple. I've tried it. I've done 2 Netflixes at a time, and it's been no problem.
Yeah, we've had 3 and 4 on multiple occasions. Because I'll be up here on my PC watching Netflix. Someone will be watching, because we have one TV in the kitchen and one in the living room. So someone will be like cooking and watching Netflix on that TV, and someone will be in the living room watching Netflix on there. Netflix currently peaks at, I think it's 15 megabit for 4K video. So if you were to use that, I think it'd be close to about 30. So it's actually less than you'd think. If you were judging by what they're currently using.
So outside of business cases, there's not really much need
No.
for. I mean, I'd say. I want a gigabit. I don't need a gigabit, but there's not really much reason for anyone to have faster than a gigabit with current technologies, unless you're running an office or a business.
I'd say that it's actually about 500. Above that is above 500. The limiting factor isn't actually, assuming it's one user. Above 500 megabit, the limiting factor isn't actually your download; it's the servers you're connecting to. If you try to upload to YouTube, for example, they peak out at about 200 megabit. So regardless of how high your upload is, you can have a gigabit upload, but it's not
You're
going
never
any higher
going to
than
really
200.
upload anything at a gigabit.
Yeah.
Unless you have like your own, unless you have like a vacation home with a media center you're setting up and you
Right.
want to copy over all your files or
Mhm.
something. But then again, that's more like what a business does, like backing up databases and customer retention or customer information, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
Like Facebook has a lot of reasons to have but they get 100 gig, they're not a gigabit, they get 100 gig cards.
Yeah.
Before we know it, there's going to be there's going to be terabyte cards, terabit cards.
I crunched the numbers, and to download the entire contents of the Snappy-Talk archive, which is what I've lovingly called our backup, would take about 8 hours with a gigabit internet connection.
Huh. You've recorded a lot of video.
It's not even that. It's we have, because one video can be around 50 gigabytes.
Right. High quality stuff.
Yeah, because it
High
is
quality
4K,
content.
100 megabit. Oh, it's high fidelity, not high quality. Those are two very different things. It's high fidelity, not necessarily high quality.
I'd like to think you do a high quality show.
So do I, but it's not normally true.
We ask you decide.
Yeah. So actually, that's a fair point. If you're in the chat, what do you guys think? Is our content usually high quality? I like to hope it is. I want to talk. So I've been listening to the After On podcast, and so it's based on After On the book, which is about an AI that basically becomes sentient and what happens after that. And so
Takes over the world and kills everybody. Obviously,
it doesn't.
That's
actually.
how every AI book ends. Then someone figures out how to kill the mothership called Skynet or whatever. Or Neo.
Skynet.
My name is Neo.
Gotta love some old-fashioned anagrams. But there's a AI, and I mentioned this in passing before we started the show, and I've just double-checked the name. It's called donotpay.com. So this works in London and major cities in the US. So you can give it a parking ticket, or if you have like a delayed flight or something, you basically pass on the information, and then it handles the rest yourself. Oh, it handles the rest itself, I should say. So in the case of travel, it actually works similar to the Amazon price service, where if it goes down and you're within the 30 days, it'll automatically drop it for you. In the case of this, though, it doesn't have to be within, the return period. So I'm currently on the page, and it reads, flight and hotel prices change all the time. Do not pay finds travel confirmations from past bookings in your inbox. When the price drops, our robot lawyer will find a legal loophole to negotiate a cheaper price or rebook you.
That's pretty cool.
And then there are similar...
I want a computer lawyer.
Right? And then there are similar things with the parking ticket thing, where if you feel like you were wrongly given the ticket, it will automatically process that for you. So it'll be things like if there was contradictory signage, or even things like there was a medical emergency. So if it was absolutely necessary that you stop there because someone was having a heart attack, they can't give you a penalty for that. So if you can provide details on that, then you can do that. If there are even down to things like incorrect details on the ticket. So if they as much as have a typo for something, you can get out of a ticket.
Because then it's not a legal document, right?
Exactly.
There's errors.
Yeah.
Finding loopholes.
If your vehicle was leased, you can actually get out of that as well. So, there's always loopholes to exploit.
I just wrote a lengthy article about why leasing is financially a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to own your car at least 6 years and live in the United States, I can't say I looked at every situation in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We should all just get Yugos. What happened to the Yugo? Speaking of former Soviet republics.
Oh man, that.
Since I talked to you last, having nothing to do with robot lawyers or Yugos, I went to the other Georgia.
Right.
We've both been in Georgia's recently.
Was it a business trip or?
It was a 24-hour-ish trip. It was very short.
Yes. I heard you mentioned it on your podcast. Or was that a different 20?
Yeah, I talked about it on the podcast and I tweeted about it. It was about a 4.5-hour flight there,
right?
About 5.5 hours back, for about 24 hours in Atlanta, which I spent 8 sleeping.
That is actually almost exactly the same journey time as here to the European Georgia. that is almost exactly the same.
Because I guess it makes sense because Europe is about as wide, to the Ural Mountains as the U.S. So do you think, to get off a technology topic, and because we're Snappy-Talk, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think the EU is going to make it? Do you think the European Union will survive?
You
think it'll still be here for 30 years, 40 years?
I'm not 100% certain. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not, but I hope it does, for lack of a better way of phrasing that, I guess. Because
you think Putin is trying to put the Soviet Union back together?
I reckon it won't even be I'm surprised this hasn't happened yet, but I'm half expecting Germany to get fed up of paying for everyone else, because.
I've pointed out a few times because Americans don't understand European economics and politics as well as we don't even understand our own politics half the time. Ask the average American, they probably can't name their senator. But actually, I read a really cool book called The United States of Europe, right when the EU was coming together. Mm-hmm. And it was essentially saying, hey, America, look out because you're about to be number 2. Right. When all these countries come together. They've been doing this whole country thing longer than you, and they have a lot of citizens, and there's a lot of good brain power in Europe. But then, when a few countries, I wouldn't say take advantage of the system, but looking at Spain and Greece, and they're easy to pick on. Greece is the easiest to pick on. So they're like, don't raise my pension age to 62 or whatever it is. I'm like, in the U.S., it's 70. We're all living longer.
Yeah.
And then they get really pissed off when they have to pay 0.5% higher in taxes and whatever we call it austerity. Yeah, like I get why Germany and France don't want to bail them out and pay for it. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I can't say I blame them.
Yeah, but on the other side of the coin, I look at this whole populist movement thing going on that I thought had snuffed out with the France election. I think it was the France election or the Germany election. One of those countries over in Europe somewhere had an election recently.
One of the Europeans.
And the horrible racist fascist guy didn't win. Like
yes.
their version of Trump didn't win. But after Brexit and then after Trump, I was like, we're going in a bad direction. And it seemed like we'd bucked that trend of building walls and building borders and separating ourselves. I think that's a bad thing. I think open borders and openness and free movement is a good thing. But we're at this weird tipping point right now where I'm nervous about where we might end up as a world, and even in this country, any country. And I'm still heartbroken to see the UK leaving the EU. I think that's an amazing and important partnership. Obviously, at least 50.01% of Brits disagree with me there.
52% precisely. Actually, it was 52 to 48.
What was your take on that? Were you willing to share how you voted?
Yeah, I voted against Brexit, which actually in the end didn't matter because my constituency was actually the highest percent of pro-Brexit in London. Because if you look at the map, what it essentially was London voted Remain and the rest of England voted Leave.
That sounds kind of like how the election maps looked after we voted this crazy guy to be president. The big cities, not quite, I mean, only New York or LA could stand up to London, maybe, big cities, but the big cities generally all voted for Hillary, and all the rural areas outside of the cities voted for Trump.
Interestingly, New York and London actually have very similar populations. And I think they are within like 1 million of each other. They're extremely close. So I was reading this like last week in the news, and I found it hilarious because they'd been talking about how shootings in America aren't actually that bad because no, wait. The reasoning is perfect because if you look at the number of deaths by gun in in New York and compare it to the number in London, over the last 30 days, there have been 14 in New York and 15 in London, and therefore, like, London is actually more dangerous than America.
Yeah, that's like saying, I don't know, that's crazy to me. And we have like 50 to 60 gun deaths in Chicago every weekend.
Right, and
every
that's
single
also
week,
only
without
over the
fail.
last 30 days. So if you look at any other time scale, it's actually larger in New York, but it was like, London had 2 on the same day, like by coincidence or whatever. And because of that like tipped it ahead of New York. And everyone's like, oh, look at, yeah.
Yeah, here's an article from October 9th, 2017. Nearly 3,000 people shot so far in Chicago this year.
That is ridiculous.
That's one city.
That is crazy.
In this country. And yet a lot of people say the solution is more guns.
That is almost as crazy as the number of guns that already are. The fact that, like, step number 1 was, why don't we just give the teachers guns? That's clearly what we're doing wrong here.
Because let's turn why don't we just make all teachers part of the National Guard? That way when North Korea invades, we're covered there, and we can protect ourselves from crazy white 17-year-old boys.
Because that was oh god, I should probably know this. The latest school shooting, which was in the US. I should probably remember the name.
Here's a fun statistic while you're looking it up.
3%
of Americans own more than 50% of the guns in this country.
Ooh.
And there's a gun for every American, but less than 1/3 of Americans owns a gun.
Bloody hell.
So 2/3 of us don't have guns, And even most gun owners want there to be universal background checks
Hmm.
because we don't want crazy people to be able to go out and buy an AK-47, but they can, or an AR-15. That's more American. AK-47. That's
They're
so
too
that's
Russian.
so Russian World War II.
Yeah.
That we need American-made AR-15s.
So the Stoneman Douglas High School. That's one I was thinking of.
Yes, my three first cousins who I just saw last week in Passover went to that high school, and they're long graduated, but that was their school. And I grew up. I was maybe a half-hour drive away from Columbine when that happened.
Right.
I grew up in Denver, so I went on lockdown.
Crazy.
I haven't been at school shootings, but I've been affected by them directly.
So they brought in a bunch of measures after this, right? So a couple of them sound reasonable, right? So ID cards that have to be on you at all times if you're a student or teacher. That's actually highly reasonable, and a lot of schools in the UK do that anyway. So you it's the same way like a RFID card would work, like in an office, right? So you tap it to get in, tap it to get out, kind of deal. So anyone who's there as a visitor is greeted by reception, all that jazz, which is reasonable. And then the one that was really crazy is that they said that all students have to have see-through backpacks.
Yeah, I've heard about the see-through backpack stuff.
And that's just ridiculous to me. Just the idea of that.
Well, you no longer get... I guess it's the balance between privacy and safety.
But it wouldn't have even stopped the shooting, because that shooting, it wasn't a pupil, right? It's not like a pupil had a gun in their backpack and took it out. So it would have actually done nothing.
They're often it's a student who brings their own gun, but an assault rifle doesn't fit in a backpack.
Right.
They're bigger than that. Like, I've held one. They're sizable. If it's fitting in your backpack, you're going to see something stick out.
Yeah.
But that does help for handguns and knives. But most mass shootings at schools aren't happening because of handguns and knives. If there's a shooting, I'd guess I would gander. This is based on zero scientific data, but I would gander a handgun or knife related violence at a school is probably more gang or drug related. Like, no one's going to do a mass shooting with a handgun. I mean, you could, but it's not going to be very effective. The worst guns are the ones that shoot, 20, 30, 40 bullets when you pull down the trigger in less than a minute.
Yeah.
And the things that were designed to kill as many people as quickly and efficiently as possible are the things that we should not have access to if you are a normal citizen that's not part of a SWAT team or the military. That's my thought.
So I'm trying to find the exact number. And the reason this matters is that there have been, I think it's more or less the same number of mass stabbings in China than there have been mass shootings in the US. Right?
But the mortality rate...
Yeah, is ridiculously different.
Yeah, because if you stab somebody, you might kill them, but you'll probably just send them to the hospital. No. If you shoot somebody, you might send them to the hospital, but you'll probably kill them.
Well, not only that, but if you have a knife, you have to, physically go up to them, stab them, and move on. Whereas if you have a gun, it's essentially a remote hole punch, right?
The Las Vegas sniper who shot down from a hotel room at a concert wouldn't happen without guns.
Yeah.
Like, period. That's... If someone had run into that concert, if you run into a country concert with a gun and with a knife and start stabbing people, you will die. But they will not hold back. They're all Republicans, not all. But if you listen to country music, obviously everyone who listens to country music is a Republican. No, that's not true. But
I can't help but feel like I'm stereotyping here. I'll be honest.
But I would bet money that you have a higher concentration of Republicans and gun owners and people who enjoy beating things up at a country concert than a non-country concert.
Yeah.
So that would be not the place I would go stabbing. I would not want to stab anybody anyway, but if I were in a situation where stabbing seemed necessary, that seems like a bad place to do it.
Yeah. And then just as a quick update, this actually happened in the last 24 hours. The person who made fun of the 17-year-old
Ingram, Laura Ingram, I think is her name.
Yeah, so she's resigned.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Although, honestly, not that good. They should have just fired her. Like
Yeah,
you do to people who are horrible human beings and represent your brand poorly. But
I'm not
Fox
sure
News apparently doesn't think she's that bad. We'll just let her quit.
how much of a quit was it though, right? Because I see these
Yeah.
all the time, and I wonder, like, because they always go like, oh yeah, it was a mutually agreed, split. And you're like, was it? Or were you told that it was? Like, you're leaving and you're going to pretend to be okay with it.
And that's, I bet, more what happened is like, we're done with this. So, yeah, but they've been, they're Fox News is losing anchors almost as quickly as Trump is losing cabinet secretaries.
Oh, man. Because it's similar to what happened with Top Gear. So Jeremy Clarkson, I forget what it was. Oh, Jeremy Clarkson punched a member of a production team. Right? So Jeremy Clarkson is a host of Top Gear, or was a host of Top Gear, I should say. They'd been shooting all day, and at the end of the day, he, got back to production, hungry and tired. I'm watching my phrasing because there's a phrase I'd rather not say in fear of being sued. So if I think
you can get sued for using a phrase,
so
it's not free speech.
No. So what it is if you refer to someone as irritable and tired, I believe it is. There was a point, because the way it works is you can't. It comes under the defamation of another person.
Slander.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. It comes under slander if you call someone drunk without having proof, right? So what would happen is newspapers, knowing they couldn't call someone drunk, would refer to them as irritable and tired. And it was, and it got to the point where they were like, wait a second, like, irritable and tired essentially means drunk at this point. So you can't say irritable and tired either. So if you refer to someone as irritable and tired, they probably mean drunk.
They may not have had their wits about them.
Right. So it's like you're calling them drunk without saying the word drunk. That's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So after a day of shooting, he was genuinely just tired and annoyed, and they had no hot food for them. They were like, "Oh, here, have a sandwich after your day of shooting." He was annoyed, and it ended up with him like punching someone. And so the BBC.
I don't think I could ever see myself punching someone over giving me a sandwich that wasn't exactly what I wanted.
Well, it wasn't. Well, I guess if you'd spent the whole day working and it was like, because I assume he usually had hot food, right?
I guess maybe I'm just not a violent person. I don't want to stab, shoot, or punch.
Yeah,
really.
No, I understand that as well. I think
maybe it's just me.
Maybe
a normal person in a situation where they've been at work all day would punch someone.
Yeah, because I can imagine working from. Because they have quite long days as well, right? So working from 8 till 8, right? A 12-hour day, coming back and being like, oh, I can't wait to have something warm. I don't know. What would you have for dinner? Like some spaghetti or something. I don't know. And they go,
good bowl of chicken soup.
Yeah, right. And this is the BBC, right? So it's a relative, and it was their number one most popular show and their biggest source of income, right? And they're like, I know we usually give you hot food at the end of a day of production, but we have some spare sandwiches that we gave the crew earlier. You can have one of those instead.
I would say annoyed. His response gives me a one word. Like, one thing comes to mind: prima donna. And most of us don't expect to have hot food delivered to us at the end of a day of work.
Yeah, that's fair. But no,
unless I open up Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever and pay for it to show up. Although I guess if he was but I still wouldn't punch over it. I would just maybe he could have thrown a hissy fit like a normal prima donna.
Yeah, but yeah, so it actually worked out better for him because the BBC, like again, they split amicably. Where what actually happened was the BBC went, we're just not going to renew your contract. And he had like 3 months on it left because he, like most BBC employees, have like a 1-year rolling contract.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because outside of Top Gear, which is, the number one grossing TV show, you don't really get paid that much at the BBC because they're government funded. So they don't have that much money to spend on people. It's also at the point where if you're paid more than, I think it's 50,000. Oh no, it must be like 100,000 per year. By the BBC, they have to publicly disclose how much they pay you. So you
It's
end up,
reasonable. So you're
yeah,
essentially a government employee or
right, yeah,
semi-government employee.
yeah, exactly. So what ends up happening is, you you might make a name for yourself on the BBC, and then a few years later, some other company with big bucks comes in and sort of sweeps you up. So they actually have a very big issue with their radio shows because they have a radio DJ host shortage because someone will become famous and then another company will come in and swoop them for like double the money because they can afford it and the BBC can't.
Everybody wants Pete Tong. I actually think he's awesome. I saw him live once. It was awesome. Did you ever see the totally unrelated the movie It's All Gone, Pete Tong?
No, I haven't.
Highly recommend it. It's a good one. I think I had to do Netflix DVD for that one when I still had that. But it's a good one. It's a mockumentary about a DJ coming up through the system. They get all these real big name DJs to do cameos in it. It's awesome.
Right.
And it has Pete Tong in the title. Speaking of BBC Radio.
So it's so the way it works is I've just double checked. If they make more than £150,000 per year, and it's given in £50,000 brackets. So for example, like the number 2 makes somewhere between 1.75 million and 1.8 million pounds per year.
I'd like to make £150,000 per year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no to that, right?
Oh, I'll go work for the BBC. I just need a visa. I tried to move to England twice, really hard as a really educated American with an MBA to move to England because they're afraid I'll take their jobs, your jobs. It's like that South Park episode.
We're not
took our jobs.
It's actually escalated from that. What's happened is we're not afraid because I forget it. Someone has a bit about this. I forget who it is, but they're like, so because there was an influx of Syrian refugees, right? And someone had the joke, they were like, all these Syrians are coming in and taking all of our Turkish people jobs.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's like, I mean, we have this stupid immigration debate going on in this country too. It's like about Latin and Central American immigrants coming into the U.S. illegally. I'm like, I live in a very agricultural county. If you buy strawberries, most places in the U.S., there's a good chance they came from somewhere near where I live. We grow a lot of food. Avocados and strawberries, I think, are the 2 biggest. But I see those workers hunched over picking those strawberries. I'm never going to do that. Like, I don't know many Americans who want to do that job.
Yeah.
But for immigrants, that's a great stepping stone into a new life. And if they can get paid minimum wage in the U.S. to do that, that could, even if they're sending half of it back home to Mexico or wherever, could totally change their family's life, like substantially better. And I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be a dishwasher. Like I got an MBA, so I didn't have to do those jobs.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm not above them. I have worked in a restaurant. I used to be a summer camp counselor. I got paid $5 a week. So I know what it's like to not get paid much, but we need those jobs. And if for anyone who's read a book and understands economics, which I know removes Donald Trump from the conversation. So I tried to have a straight face and I couldn't.
That took a second to process. I was like, wait, oh, okay.
If you understand economics, one of the best ways to grow an economy is to add people to it. And you can't we don't want to shock an economy by just like opening the gates and saying, all right, 200,000 people move in tomorrow. But I mean, maybe that actually probably it'd be fine. They'd diffuse in a country of 300 million, 200,000 is not that many.
Yeah.
But yeah, adding more people to the population helps the economy because you're adding workers, and those workers need homes. They need to eat. They need services. There's all these things they need too. So it's not as simple as saying immigrants are good and bad. They are good for the economy. Like that is science right there. There's no dispute in that. It's just, do you not want them to live near you? And I don't care. I'm happy to have a diverse neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think there was oh damn, there was a game show. Sorry, not a game show, like a news show. But so the BBC has a couple of shows that like do comedy basically based on the news, right? And they're as game shows. And one of them, I think it was Have I Got News for You? A couple of years back, did like had a segment on the average person from blank, right, in the UK. So if you look at like the average British person in the UK, they're uneducated, have an average age of like 43, do some, and make more money than basically anyone else. Whereas you have, people from, I don't know, call it Japan, right, come over to the UK, and they're highly educated, highly talented, make less money, and are actually better because, then they tend to not be alcoholics or drug addicts in the same way that British people are.
And one thing, when during the campaign, I remember when Trump called the Mexican immigrants bad hombres, was talking about how they're all criminals and they're all rapists and they're all bad. Turns out that's not true. Like most things Trump says. Man, I'm on a roll today. So
I feel like you should just play this segment on
Oh no,
you didn't.
Yeah. But there's numbers and data and statistics show that that's the opposite, because they're afraid of getting deported. So they want to do everything super, super by the book. They follow laws. They end up being great residents, and they're double good because they pay taxes, but they don't get any of the benefits back.
Yeah.
So, they're actually paying more to be American than actual Americans are, as one way to look at it. Whereas, if you grew up here, I could punch a cop. I'm not going to get thrown out of the country. I might get thrown in jail, but I'm not getting thrown out of the country.
Yeah, and even if you're thrown in jail, you're still in the country, right?
Right. You're better off being in an American... Well, I guess it depends on where. You might be better off in an American jail than Mexico out of jail, depending on where you are in the country.
And there's actually I know that it's a thing amongst homeless people in the UK, where occasionally they'll try to get thrown in jail intentionally, with the idea being, if you're homeless, at least if you're in jail, you get fed and a bed to sleep in, and
And when in Denver, where I grew up, there are days sometimes where it goes below freezing, below sub-zero temperatures, 0 Fahrenheit, not 0 Celsius, like very, very cold. Every time that happens, there's usually, it seems like one homeless person dies from freezing to death. Before that, the shelters all go try to round up, and not in a bad way round up, but to try to get people to come inside. We have a warm place for you to be where you don't have to be out here freezing. But you can't go into any of the shelters if you test positive for drugs or alcohol, I think, which eliminates a lot. They won't take a dog. So a lot have pets, a lot of homeless people. So everyone doesn't get to go in. But anything I would rather see them in jail than out on the street dying. Yeah, for sure. And that's...
On that light note,
let's not have homeless people die. Yeah. We gotta end on something more positive.
Yeah, hang on. Let's. Did you know? Let me just refresh Reddit real quick and see what comes up. Oh, come on! The top thing can't be Donald Trump talking about the Kremlin.
Well, I saw on my Google Now, apparently Russia is telling its citizens what to put into bomb shelters to get ready for a nuclear war with the U.S.
It is ridiculous.
We're going to end up in this big fight over Syria. We're going to end up killing a bunch of people. No one needs... There's only one person in Syria who really needs to die right now, and his name is Bashar al-Assad. See, things I say on the internet are reasons I can't go visit some countries.
There are also reasons you'll never be able to be a politician.
I don't think I'd be allowed into Iran at all. Yeah.
Right, so I've gone on to reddit.com/r/uplifting news on the hope of...
I've been to Shower Thoughts. I've never been to Uplifting News.
Have you not? It's one of the best subreddits to be subscribed to, because every now and again you get some uplifting news. So let's just spit off a few of these and feel better about ourselves. So close to me in London, in Ealing no less, which is where I was actually for these last couple of days, an abortion clinic safe zone was imposed by the council, which means there's a buffer zone around an abortion clinic, stopping people from like holding up signs that are anti.
You're a baby murderer.
Yeah.
I see that. Here's another good story of the day. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Speaking of homeless people, this is a great way to wrap up a conversation. The Albuquerque, New Mexico government, which for those of you on the other side of the world, Albuquerque is a small city here in the U.S. No, I know you guys know geography. I'm kidding. Weird Al even wrote a song about Albuquerque once. It was great. If you've never heard it and you have 12 minutes to spare, yeah, it's a long song. Check that one out. Albuquerque, New Mexico government drives van to popular panhandling locations twice a week with offers to pay for work on beautification projects in the city. So they're hiring people who are standing on corners begging for money, saying, "We will pay you to do a job." That's awesome.
Exactly.
Like, high five, New Mexico.
That's the right way to do it. And then you throw them in jail so they have warmth for the night.
Yeah. I saw this great t-shirt once online. I wish I'd bought it. It was a picture of this beautiful desert landscape with a sunset.
Right.
And below it said, New Mexico. Way cleaner than old Mexico. I love Mexico. I've made fun of Mexico like 4 times in this show. I really love Mexico and love going there.
So
it's awesome. If there were not Zika virus there, I would have probably been there at least once or twice in the last year.
If you're a Mexican border police who's watching this right now, debating whether or not to let Eric into your country, he's a nice person at heart. I can vouch for him.
I'm already in. Mexico is not trying to keep us out. It's the other way. So I'm in. I'm safe. I've got my U.S. passport. Yeah. I wish I had. If you could get dual U.S. and EU citizenship and have a passport from both, you could go pretty much anywhere in the world. Because a lot of the world hates America, which I get. Because, I mean, look at who we put in charge. I get hating America for that. I would too. And I went to Jordan once. I was in college. Bush was president. And I said I was Canadian, which apparently Canadians hate. But right. I'm a quarter Canadian. And Jordanians like Canadians better than Americans. Who doesn't like Canada?
I think everyone prefers Canadians to Americans, frankly.
I think even unless you live in the South of the United States, you probably do. Yeah. I love Canada. I mean, there's no one that doesn't like Canada. They're just like nice people. Like Canada and Costa Rica, got nothing against. Like they're just not controversial. Like Switzerland, like you can get mad at them because of their not taking a stance. Like Canada does take a stance. I'm sorry. They apologize.
Switzerland tried too hard to be neutral and just end up pissing off both sides.
Yeah, whereas Canada, kumbaya, it works.
Oh man, awesome. And I guess because this is the internet, we need a piece of cat news as well. Florida man is reunited with a cat he lost 14 years ago to a hurricane.
Wow, that's incredible.
That is crazy.
Have you ever heard? So there's this old radio show from the U.S. that's still on called Loveline. It stars Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew. It used to for years and years. Now they have a podcast together, which was really cool. I got to go meet them at their podcast studio. But they used to play this game called Germany or Florida, which I resurrected on the Oh No We Didn't podcast. I challenge you to spread the Germany or Florida love to a future episode of Snappy-Talk.
I was going to
trick Emily.
I was planning on, because I'm aware of it, because when I listened to the Oh No We Didn't, I actually was going to send in a voicemail. And then I spent like an entire hour just screwing up what I kept trying to say in this voicemail. So I just decided to give up. But I'd found like a couple of good articles and stuff and everything. And after an hour of trying to send this in, I was like, this isn't working. And just like decided to give up. But I was planning on...
We're not picky.
I was going to modify it a bit. And I was going to go for a Georgia or Georgia. I thought that would have been interesting.
Oh, that'd be fun.
So I might send that in instead. Find a couple of Georgia or Georgias and send those in.
Niet. No, spasiba. That's a better answer. I just used about all of the Russian I know in 2 words.
Oh man.
Oh, and Nazdarovia. If you're gonna have the most important thing to learn in all languages is how to have a toast, I think, because that way, no matter where you go, you can share a drink with someone.
Yeah, and then just in case you're wondering, the Georgian for that is Galmarjos. Galmarjos.
One time in elementary school, a friend taught me in German how to say, "I would like to buy your sister," but I don't remember how.
Well, that's
something
an interesting one.
The things that you learn, like in Spanish class, I took 4 years of high school Spanish because I thought that would be more useful living near places that speak Spanish than like French. Sorry, France, not that many people speak French. Like, I know it sounds pretty, but not the biggest. When I went to Paris, I had this frustrating experience where I was like, I speak Hebrew, English, and Spanish. I don't speak your obscure language, so you won't talk to me and I can't get around. But I was going somewhere with this tangent, and talking about France threw me. I had a good point in my head. I almost made it 2 hours without losing a train of thought. I never do that on a podcast.
Oh, man. Anyway, thanks for coming on. So, if it comes back to you, just tweet it my way and I'll mention it next week.
Sounds good. It probably wasn't that important.
So we've mentioned the Oh No We Didn't podcast. I highly suggest you, not you obviously, because you host it, you the listener at home, go listen to it. It is it's actually, I caught up with it because you guys had two episodes in like 2 days randomly.
Oh yeah, we've had a couple issues where we've like missed a day, so we've done makeup episodes. Like we actually missed yesterday, so we owe a makeup episode for that one.
So I personally really enjoy listening to it because I have a couple of these podcasts. Like there's a podcast called the Bring Your Own Device podcast, and that is primarily like Apple based. And I just use them to sort of keep me grounded in subjects that I'm not usually actively researching. So when it comes to, politics, religion, and money, the Oh No We Didn't podcast is how I keep myself grounded in that. And I found it actually really interesting because I am not a religious person myself. So listening to the origins of Passover, I found actually quite interesting. I listened to that podcast.
Glad you enjoyed that.
I listened to it just yesterday as I was cooking dinner, because we have a Google Home downstairs. So as I'm cooking, I'll throw up a podcast and listen to that. So I found that really interesting. So go check that out.
Since my Snappy-Tech appearance, we now have a Google Home in the kitchen, 2 Google Home Minis, one in the office and one in the bedroom. Got a Nest. Part of that we had before, so it was just added 1 Mini. Added a Nest Hello doorbell, which actually, since we've been recording, I watched the FedEx guy drop off a package for me that has additional components for my new Nest security system.
Right.
And I also have a Nest alarm. So Google, you pretty much own me. More than Facebook. And I went through Facebook and
completed your Project Pi phone.
Yeah. So I'm not so worried about Facebook taking my information. It's Google that's they own me.
Right. On that note, so there's the Oh No We Didn't podcast. But what else? Where do you want people going to check you out?
Yeah. So best place to go. I have another podcast that's solo. I mean, I interview guests, but I run it myself. So, Oh No We Didn't. I have a co-host, Whitney. She is awesome and hilarious as well. Super smart. So we do that show together, but I also have my own podcast. It's called the Personal Profitability Podcast. It is about money and entrepreneurship, and a blog, also Personal Profitability. But as a freebie for you guys for listening to the ridiculous things that I had to say here today, if you want a free access, I created a Personal Profitability Bootcamp. It's a week-long series. You sign up for free at personalprofitability.com/bootcamp. And you'll get an email every morning with a link to a video about 10 to 15 minutes long, helping you get on your path to personal profitability. It's no strings attached. If you like it and learn something awesome, if not, you could hit unsubscribe and I'll be sad. But it didn't cost you any more than that.
I'm totally not going to go and do that myself right now. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always great chatting with you. We had, on the Snappy, you were the last proper guest we had on the Snappy-Talk podcast before we took a hiatus.
Wow. Well, so I anyone who's been trying to catch up on Snappy Tech and listen to the most recent episode, they're going to hear me.
Yeah, so
Wow.
it was because we had the one with you, and then we had one episode, and then we haven't had an episode since until just a couple of days ago. So we came back last Sunday. So this is like the first full week back as such. So yeah, if someone's listening to us back to back, it just sounds like you came on like 2 weeks, like one after the other.
Well, I'm
Whereas
honored.
in fact there's like a month and a half gap there. So it's been great talking to you, and yeah, hopefully we can catch up again soon. As
thanks
always,
so much.
if you want to check this podcast out, you can go to snpy.tech /podcast/live to come join us live every Wednesday night and Sunday night. We have a Patreon and coffee page. Links are in the description and on screen now, so go do that. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always great seeing you guys, and I'll see you guys on Sunday for the tech show, where it will be myself, Paul, and potentially Benjamin Abawaji from Lover of Tech. We'll see. There's at least 2 of us, so we'll see you there.